Hi everyone, welcome to day 7 of Mrs. Lamprin's math groups. I've gotten a lot of questions about the fractions, so I am making a couple videos to kind of help you out. So the first thing that we're going to go over is just fractions in general, and then mostly focusing on lesson 1 and 2 kind of. And then I'm going to make 2 more videos, one that has to do with lessons 3, 4, and 5, and partly 6. Okay, so keep tuned for those. These are going to be quick and hopefully helpful. So let's look at the first part of this. Before we begin, I just want to go over the basics of fractions. So we've been doing fractions since you guys were in 2nd grade. I know that because I had many of you in 2nd grade. So when we partition shapes, we cut them into sizes. So the ones that I know that we worked on, at least in 2nd grade, was halves, thirds, fourths, sixths, and I believe we did eighths. Okay, those are the easiest ones to cut. Okay, so those ones we know. So I'm just going to draw a quick picture to go over that. So we have, if we have halves, right? The number on the top is how many pieces I have, and the bottom is how many it's cut into. So that's really important moving forward throughout this whole unit is understanding the bottom number. What number? The bottom number is what you're cutting it into. I like to think of it this way. Cut into. Cut into. Okay? So I'm cutting it into how many pieces? I'm cutting it into 2 pieces. This one I'm cutting into 3 pieces. So I'm going to cut it into 3 equal pieces. I'm going to cut this one into 4 pieces. I'm going to cut this one into 6 pieces. I'm going to cut this one into 8 pieces. Okay, this right here, without shading, okay, just cutting it into these pieces. So if I was just to name what these were cut into, this would be halves, thirds, fourths, or quarters, sixths, and eighths. Okay? That's just what we call them. That's what they're cut into. Now, one word that keeps coming up in your Zern lesson is fractional units. Okay? You know this. It's just a fancy name. Okay? Fractional units is what it's cut into. What is this cut into? It's cut into halves. So the fractional unit is going to be something over what? How many pieces? 2. When you're looking at it, it's 1. So you're looking at one of the pieces. So 1 piece would be 1/2. 1 piece would be 1/3. 1 piece is 1/4. Each of these are worth 1/4. It's a fractional unit. Okay, one of the things that's different about this than what you've done in the past is they will shade something and ask you to name it, and that's how we get this, right? We named it as 1/2 because we shaded 1. For Zern, they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're having you cut your shapes and name each piece as this is a third, this is a third, this is a third. So fractional unit is just a fancy way of saying what is one piece of this entire rectangle circle worth? What is it worth? Most of this is going to be in rectangles. But what is one piece of the bar going to be? That's all it's asking for fractional units, okay? So when it says, what's the smallest fractional unit? Well, it's what is, when you cut it into the smallest piece, what is one of those pieces worth? So the top number for those, when it says fractional unit, is always going to be a 1. So for fractional unit, the top number is always going to be a 1. The bottom number is going to be what it's cut into. All right? Now I have a couple things that I want to go over for lesson 2. I'm going to erase some of this if I can erase it. I'll just use this. The other thing that I want to go over really quick is if we do one thing they jump right into, which I didn't realize they were going to. I thought it was going to be more of just reviewing a fraction, then get into the hard stuff, is if I gave you this shape, okay, and I cut this rectangle into 6, okay, so I'm going to cut it into 6. Okay, if I shade this, what fraction is this? Well, I always start with, and this is something to teach my 4th and 5th graders, is I always start with the whole. So this whole shape is worth how many pieces? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what it's cut into. That's what it's cut into. It's cut into 6 pieces. How many are shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. So this fraction is 5 of 6. 5 of 6. Part of a whole. Part of a whole. Okay? Now, the new thing they did is they told you, okay, that 5, 6 is what I have. We've been doing that since 2nd grade, naming that fraction. Now, they want to put it into an addition sentence. So all they're doing for this is they had you do a number bond, just like we did with whole numbers, right? When we did all our word problems, you would do this plus this equals this. It's the same thing, it's just a fraction. So don't let the fraction scare you. Our whole that we have that we're talking about is going to be 5, 6, right? We have 5 of 6, and they want you to break it up into different pieces. So the first way they have you do it is breaking up into single units. So this is worth what? 1/6. So they want you to do 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 1/6. Okay? Are you with me so far? Just did the single ones. So this problem would just be 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. One more plus 1/6. Okay? And the way you check it is this number. Whatever this top number is how many of these you should have. Okay? That's the simple fractional unit addition. So we just did the number in individual piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? That is for lesson 2. I'm going to do one more and then we're going to move on to the other 2 units. So if I was to do, let's do 5/4. Okay? Before we even move on, I want to just point out this is going to be very helpful for many of you. This is called an improper fraction. It means when the numerator is greater than the denominator, it means you have more than what's in your whole. So the minute that this number right here is greater than your bottom number, you're always going to have a whole. You're always going to start with 2 shapes. Okay, if that makes sense. So instead of drawing one shape and dividing it into 4, we're going to draw 2 shapes and divide it into 4. Because I know one of them is already going to be complete because this number is bigger. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to automatically start before I even begin. I see that this is a greater number. I'm going to draw 2 rectangles that I don't cut yet. Just going to draw 2. Okay, that's always my first hint. The minute this number is bigger, draw 2 shapes. You might have to draw more. But for this one, we're only going to have to draw 2, so we're going to start simple. Okay, so this number is greater, so here we go. Oops, I just erased that. Oopsie. This number is greater, so here's my first one. Here's one rectangle, and here's my second rectangle. Okay, again, I drew 2 rectangles because it's an improper fraction, and 5 is greater than 4. Okay, now, my denominator tells me what it's cut into. It's cut into 4s. So each rectangle, think of them as separate pieces. Each rectangle is going to be cut into 4. This one will be cut into 4, and this one will be cut into 4. So here we go. Here's the first one. I cut into 4. Great. I cut into 4. So there's my rectangles. They're not very great, but there's my rectangles. Now, we have enough rectangles in order to shade this. So now we just go back to our fraction. We've cut it into 4s. How many of these do I shade? Well, I'm going to shade 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So I've shaded 5. If I wanted you to convert this to a mixed number, meaning I wanted you to understand that I have a whole and I have some pieces. Think of it as a chocolate bar. I have how many chocolate bars? I have 2 chocolate bars, right? Each chocolate bar is cut into 4 pieces. Okay? Which one do I have a whole for? Which is a whole chocolate bar? Oh, this one. This one's complete, right? So that means I have one whole. And then this one's I only have part of. So how would I name this fraction? So now I'm going to forget that this one exists. What's that fraction? That fraction is going to be 1 of 4. 1 of 4. So this is 1/4. Are you with me so far? So the minute this was bigger, I made 2 rectangles that I didn't cut. I went back to what it's cut into. I cut each of them separately, into 4 pieces. Okay? Then I just went back and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's completely full, so it's going to be a whole. This one's only partially full, so it's going to be 1 of 4. Okay? So it's going to be 1 and 1/4. That's not really what the lesson was about, but I feel that it's really important to tell you that because I think some of you are seeing this and like, I don't understand. There are 8 pieces. Why is it 5 of 4? Okay? So that's why I wanted to clarify. This is not 5/8 because these are, when you see this little separation here, it means they're separate wholes. So think of a candy bar, think of a square cake. Okay? They're separate. 2 cakes, 2 chocolate bars. Okay, that only happens when this number is bigger though. When this number is smaller than the denominator, then it's one big whole. Okay? Now, for this one, if I was to follow this direction, right, and they wanted me to do 5/4, okay, I would do, so 5/4 equals, well, how many fourths? Okay, well, I'm going to write 5 of them, okay? So it's going to be 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 1/4, okay? That part is pretty simple. For the most part, you all seem to be getting that part. You understand that this one is just telling you how many of the single ones you're going to get. The part that I see some of you struggling with is the next step that I'm going to do. This next step is to write it in a different way, okay? Decompose it in a different way. Okay, this is real simple, guys. They just want you to manipulate these a little bit. So they want you to combine a couple. So you could do, if there's no wrong answer except for rewriting this. That's wrong. If it says 2 different ways, you can't write this again because it's the same. It has to be different. So one way to make it different is to combine a couple. So if I decide to do, let's say, these 2, okay? If I add these together, so 1/4 and 1/4, so 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4, okay? So I replace this with 2/4. So what's left? Well, I still have 1, 2, 3. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. And it still equals 5/4. Okay? So if it says write it in a different way, you're just combining some of them. Okay? Do you understand that so far? The other option would have been to do, this is 2/4, and then add these together, which would have been 1, 2, 3/4. So you could have done 2/4 plus 3/4. Okay? It's just a different way of doing it. That's for lesson number 2. Now I'm going to get into the more tricky stuff. But make sure you're understanding this. If you are not understanding this, I can set up a Zoom call later on, late in the afternoon today, with some of you to kind of connect. I hope that this part helps. Please reach out if you have questions. All right, I'm moving on to the next set.